Hello, Dan Sullivan here. Digital Tech Partners, we're a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business. Talk to you today about our most popular and widely used risk assessment service. 3 layers to cybersecurity. Keeping it simple, there's technical controls, there's antivirus, there are active firewalls, there are administrative controls. Hopefully, usually this is the weakest area. It's policies and procedures, open desk policy, password standards and such, incident response plans, and things like that. And then physical controls, cameras, locks, and gates. All right, cybersecurity services we offer. The risk assessment, we identify your gaps and vulnerabilities. Second, information security plan services, policies for administrative control, as we just spoke to. Health check, periodic risk assessment to identify new gaps. So after you have a risk assessment, no more than a year, ideally 6 months, do another risk assessment, find any new gaps that you may have. Awareness training program, educate your employees. 9 out of 10 breaches are due to human error. So awareness training in cybersecurity is fundamental to secure your environment. NIST 800-171 compliance services. If you're a DoD contractor, you need to get certified to be able to do business with the Department of Defense. So a value map. Here we'll look at all of our services, but we're going to focus here in this presentation on the red area, cyber attack. So the business issue. You have a cyber attack, you get ransomware. The problem is that you're vulnerable to that attack and you don't know it. The way to find that out is through a risk assessment. If you have an issue with regulatory compliance, and the problem there is fines and penalties, your information security plan should be the solution. If you need cyber aware employees because you get a breach, then you have weak administrative controls, you need awareness training. And finally, the CMMC standard, the NIST 800-171 compliance that you need to do. DoD contractors needed to do business with the DoD. The solution there is our NIST 800-171 gap analysis delivered by 2 CMMC registered practitioners on staff. So our solutions impact your problems to resolve the business issue. We focus on people, process, and technology, and the challenges each layer brings. Let's talk about the NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology Cybersecurity Framework. This is the basis and the framework we use when we do our cybersecurity risk assessment service. We follow this, and we're specifically talking in a risk assessment about the identify block. And you'll also see protect, defect, respond, and recover. And I have some examples of that in a bit. So what do we do in our risk assessment? We'll educate you on best practices, and we'll work this cybersecurity framework and map it to your business. We'll evaluate your client practices, your best practices, your current state versus best practices, I should say, and we'll map that and see what the variance is. Further, we'll identify gaps to be closed. So, a little deeper on the NIST security framework. We'll talk here to the protect block, the detect block, protect, detect, and respond. Here in these examples, there's personal identifiable information, PII, that needs to be protected. Malware is detected. A response might be a rollback. Intellectual property of the company needs to be protected. Detecting an external file transfer of company data. Intrusion alert would be a response. Data theft, detection of a network breach, close the ports on the network. Unauthorized access, zero trust violation, where zero trust is people only have access to the information they need, so you shut down access. So there's some simple examples just to kind of give you some detail on the cybersecurity framework. Here now, we're talking about identify. Our cybersecurity risk assessment is the identify block, And then Recover is our information security planning services. Let's talk about Identify. What data is important to you? What level of tolerance do you have to lose any or all of your data? What tolerance do you have to have your data locked up and ransomed in ransomware? Uh, Also, how much downtime is acceptable? If you're offline with your business, do you want to have a recovery plan where you're offline only the current day and you can roll back to the previous day? That is the ideal situation. So let's wheel over to recovery in green. Do you have a tested business continuity plan, disaster recovery plan, as it goes, in place? Incident response plan, business continuity plan. If you lose your physical facility through fire, do you have the ability to recover off-site? That would be a business continuity plan. Incident response plan, if you get a ransomware attack and your data gets locked up, do you have the ability to roll back to the last good data set, the end of the previous day? And in this scenario, you lose 1 day's work. And that, believe it or not, in a ransomware situation is the ideal. If you don't have the ability to roll back, then you're in deep trouble. So, do you have a communications plan? Do you have a decision tree where everybody's notified in the order of importance? Do you have a tiered recovery procedure where this application has to be available first, this service should come up second, etc.? So, what department, if you will, should be restored first? All of this is part of a good cybersecurity posture. But here we're talking about the blue. We're going to identify your gaps and vulnerabilities. So let's dig in it just a little deeper. What data sets do you want to protect? Data protection is everything these days. You know, who owns the data? Who are the power users? Accounting, HR, the personal identifiable information in HR, the business numbers and the financials in accounting, lines of business applications. We're going to go through all of that and identify what you're doing and map it to best practices. So, what are the threats that could impact that data? A cyber attack, somebody accidentally deletes a file that you really need. An intentional insider, you have an employee that knows they're going to be let go, and you don't act fast enough to shut off their access and they cause some damage. And then phishing, email phishing really is very dangerous and people aren't paying close attention. So here are some examples of threats that impact you on the data side. What is your current ability to detect and respond to those threats? What's your recovery time objective? Do you have one? Downtime per group, lost revenue, missed opportunity. How long can you be down? Don't you want to design a plan where you're only losing the current day of the attack and that you're able to recover back to the end of the previous business day? I would think so. In any case, the identify step, these are the things that the risk assessment, it's the value that it brings, and it's really the first thing you need to do to find out what you need to protect. So step two, protect, detect, respond. What boxes can we check? Where are the gaps? Compared to the assets and risks we identified, which are the most crucial holes to fill today? Are you comfortable with remaining gaps? Recover. Bottom line here. Is your plan in place? Your recovery plan, either business continuity or incident response? Is it tested? Does your team know roles and responsibilities? Do you have that decision tree in place? Okay, so let's talk about our two flavors. We have a high level 1 hour or so interrogation, and then we go off and we'll come back with a report for you. We'll identify what is most important to your company. We'll analyze, detect missing items, make recommendations. Fundamentally, we'll categorize and publish a list of your critical and high risk items. We'll discuss implications of your response capabilities and make recommendations as needed. And here in the basic, we recommend a go forward plan to close gaps found and vulnerabilities. We will speak to what you have for holes, and what we think you need to do to close that hole. The comprehensive risk assessment is a little more time. It's a couple hours of interrogation, and then we come back with some analysis and reporting. And there are some things that are the same, and we'll call out the things that are different. So we'll identify what's important to your company. We'll review how well your current protect strategies are working. So that's a difference there. We'll look at how your strategies, your firewall, for example, is it active? Is it passive? That kind of thing. We'll identify gaps in your existing protect strategies. We'll analyze your detect layer for missing items, things that you'd need to be able to detect an event happening that you don't have in place, and we'll make recommendations about those as needed. We'll categorize and publish the list of critical and high risk items. So that's the same as the basic risk assessment. We'll discuss implications of your current response capabilities, and we'll make recommendations as needed. And we'll verify the existence and validity of your existing recovery plans. So if we find recovery plans, we will look at what you have. And if you don't have them, we will make recommendations on what you should have in place so that you can recover and have that scenario where you only lose the current day, you can roll back to the end of the previous business day. Finally, we'll create an action plan for you in detail to close gaps that we find and vulnerabilities identified. One example of that might be you have a passive firewall and we recommend active, or that you're not looking at the firewall logs on a regular basis, things like that. So a little more depth and breadth and more time spent on recovery in the comprehensive risk assessment. So what do? We serve these markets: medical, legal, financial services, education, state and local government, and government contractors. The standards that we use, we just talked about the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. There is a health and human services risk assessment, a flavor of what we do for HHS. We also address PCI if you do payment processing. There are standards there that you have to conform to. We'll pay attention to that and see how you're doing, and if you are compliant, in fact. And then finally, for DoD contractors that need to do work with the Department of Defense, a federal thing, if you will, although there are a lot of small local companies in this market, we will get you certified against the NIST SP 800-171 CMMC standard. And we have two practitioners there. So call to action. We're here. We're ready. You have two low-cost alternatives, a little more depth with the comprehensive, and maybe just get an idea on where you stand, where your vulnerabilities and gaps are with our basic assessment. We'll talk to you. It's free. Give us a ring, click, and call anytime. And I thank you for your time, and we look forward to working with you. Have a great day.